Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toivo Njabela, your host for tonight. Let's quickly look at today's front page of Namibian Sun. In this section tonight, I'm joined by Evilastus Karonda, who is the president of NANLO, a labor union federation in the country, one of the new ones in the country. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You used to be, you actually rose to fame about a decade ago, becoming one of the most firebrand unionists of the time. And then somehow you were chucked out of NUNW, where you were Secretary General, and you just disappeared. What have you been up to?
We've been busy.
Yeah.
We've been busy. You know, we started the Namibia National Labour Organization in 2014.
Yeah.
Launched it in May of 2014 as well. And soon thereafter, we then became very busy, you know, inundated with a lot of complaints and requests, most especially from the employees, the seagoing employees.
Yeah.
The majority of whom were employed by Fish Corps, or Sea Flower, subsidiary of Fish Corps. So we were busy. We started off pretty well, and at that time, nobody really wanted to even touch these employees and their complaints, not even with a stick at a distance.
Yeah.
So we got involved, and soon after that, the employees, as you know, launched a wildcat strike, and we ended up representing them. And the complaints that they had are not different from the complaints that are there today, most of which were a direct result of the corrupt way in which Fish Corps and largely a lot of the fishing companies were run. So we were busy. We created a functioning union system throughout the country, but we chose to fight our battles mostly in a boardroom. We have, for instance, recently concluded a retrenchment agreement with Flamingo In-Flight Services, a company also partly owned by Saki Shangala and Adikulipi. They had let go of about 23 of their employees. So we've been busy. It's just perhaps out of the public eye or below the radar, but nonetheless actively involved in the labor market space.
Okay.
Yeah.
You a decade ago, that was not your approach. You know, you were outspoken, you were very energetic, you led demonstrations on the streets, and you ruffled feathers, as a matter of fact. Have you been humbled by those experiences? Is that you regret how you did things and you have now changed to do it differently? Or?
Not at all, not at all. Look, times are different. Yes, there would be times when, for instance, public demonstrations and those kinds of things would be necessary, even in the current, economic space or dispensation. But there are also other times when boardroom talks are more constructive and more helpful, and you achieve virtually the same results as you would have achieved if you were on the streets. Now, when the need arises for us to be on the streets, we'll definitely take to the streets. But it is also unhelpful for one to get to the streets without having had the opportunity to establish functional and solid structures. And that's what we've been really, trying to do. We have gotten there. And I think in the not too distant future, we'll be able to also begin to articulate workers' issues in a much more, perhaps, public way, if you will, for want of a better word. But we are there.
Yeah. and the one of the highlights of your time at NUNW, and I don't want to drag you back much to the past, but I think for context, so you were pursuing this issue of GIPF. You were at the forefront of that thing, and a lot of powerful people were the beneficiaries of that scheme, and there was work behind the scenes to actually sort of usher you out of NUNW. Do you feel that you were sacrificed because of that fight, or did you commit any transgressions that got you checked out of the unions?
No, look, there's nothing else that led to my expulsion from the organization, and that's why it was an unlawful expulsion. That's why it was hasty and so on, and it was all because the heat that I was perhaps generating from within the organization became unbearable to those that were pretty much close to those that were in the corridors of power, most of whom, as you rightly said, were the beneficiaries of the grand-scale theft that took place at GIPF. So the fight was not just about GIPF, it was about corruption. GIPF became a case in point because of its magnitude.
Yes.
But it was all about the use or misuse of public funds for personal gain, trade union leaders being put in positions of trust and abusing those positions to advance their own interests at the expense of the greater majority of the people they're supposed to represent. But today, we still see that nothing has been done to the culprits. I mean, reports came out, people were named, things are there. I mean, it's not as if it's a secret. And as you would recall, a few months back, I think sometime mid last year, towards the end of last year, we also came out. And this is something we are pretty much busy with. We believe that the quickest way to get to the bottom of the GIPF rod is to deal with the Prosecutor General. And I think she has committed prosecutorial misconduct as far as our assessment of it is concerned. And we still feel that she must be brought before a competent court of law and answer the extent to which she had abused her powers in covering up for the individuals and the collectives who stole from the workers. And I think once that, lid is removed, you would be able to then get to the actual individuals who may have benefited from this and put an end to it. So we still are very much interested in that, but legal battles also cost money.
Now, on that subject, and you are mentioning the Prosecutor General, her argument is that the investigators, the police and everybody else that is involved in that process have not produced enough evidence for her to actually pursue individuals. Is it not fair then to also include the investigators into that scheme?
Well, I think for starters, it's a blatant lie. I mean, it's not true. She's lying through her teeth. There's enough overwhelming evidence. I mean, it's not just the investigators. I'm talking about GIPF itself had conducted a report, a very thoroughgoing investigation into this thing. It produced a report. NAMFISA did the same. All of these reports, when you read them even separately, you would see there are areas in which both reports coincide, and the recommendations that are contained in both reports also coincide. And specific individuals and companies' names are listed. I think the Police did what they said they could do. They got money that they wanted to get to be able to further do the forensic investigations and so on. That was done. But you see, I feel that for the Prosecutor General to say there is no evidence to prosecute this thing is in itself an act of treason.
Yes.
And she must be held to account for that because she's telling us a lie.
She did drag some guy to court.
Yeah, well, look, that's
maybe
cosmetic.
Maybe that is more evidence that she needed.
You see, if there are people, see, GIPF has a board of trustees.
Yeah.
All right. This is the body whose individuals or members have a fiduciary duty towards the fund.
Yeah.
And they had appointed companies administrators to do some of the work for them, including but not limited to the management or disbursements of funds from the development capital portfolio. Now, all of these individuals are still alive. They had a duty. They clearly did not perform up to that duty. I don't see any of them having been called to answer. You see? So what evidence do you need to know that a particular person who was a trustee acted in a manner that was not in the best interest of the trust or his duties, and therefore must come to answer? You don't need evidence for that. You don't even need to investigate.
Let me take you back, Avilastus, to the seaman situation, the fishermen. What is the best way to deal with this matter now? Because these people remain on the streets. They lost their jobs, of course, for transgressions that I personally think were not big enough to have thrown all the thousands of people on the streets. But is it the manner in which we structure our fishing quotas? Of course, there was also there's a lot of corruption involved, and some people are in jail as we speak. But what is the best way forward?
Look, I think the best way forward, first and foremost, is we should not play politics with this thing. You remember when the fishermen were on strike, they came to Windhoek. I led a delegation of the fishermen to the current president, whom I thought had an interest, a genuine interest in what was going on here. But it is clear then, I mean, it became pretty much clear to me that he was just trying to play politics. He was more interested in public relations than anything else. And soon after that, meetings ensued with the Ministry of Labor to try and sort this matter out. And who did he send to come and attend the meetings? He sent Bernard Esau and Zaki Shangala. They joined us at the meetings with the Ministry of Labor to discuss issues that related to companies in which the two of them, today as we know now, were deeply involved and for which they're in prison. So you can't tell me the president did not know that. He must have known that these two ministers that he had sent to us had an interest to protect, and I'm sure that's why he sent them to us. So what needs to be done, one, we should not play politics with this. And two, we should come out and say to these fishermen and their families that, guys, we treated you in his way which was bad. We are prepared to make amends. We will not only give you employment opportunities, we will also make sure that you benefit directly from the fishing quotas that we allocate. So create an entity to which fishing quotas will be allocated that will generate an income for you and your families and those that may not be alive today, but also you would have full-time employment and gainful employment that would ensure that you would continue to live dignified lives. Because anything else would not help address the plight of these people, and it would not even bring back Wolfish-based economy to where it should be. So I think that is the most elementary things that I think government should be able to do.
This question I posted to a lot of people that came to the show, because the number I put it to him. I am saying the fact that almost every politician in the National Assembly has stakes in the fishing industry, does that also create a very untenable situation where they cannot really assert themselves properly on matters like this because it may disadvantage them in some way?
You see, that's correct. It's correct. I think it's a very accurate assessment of the situation. There is one of the issues that the Ministry of Labour raised, and they have been raising this since 2014, is that the Labour Act in its current form cannot apply in a manner that satisfies the peculiar needs of seagoing employees. Okay, and therefore there was a need to ratify an ILO convention that specifically deals with work at sea. Now, the ratification of that was stalled, and as it is today, we don't even know where it is. Yeah. The domestic laws that we have are such that they can easily accommodate the ratification or domestication of this ILO convention to make it easier for labor unions, for workers there, and employers to engage on matters on workplace matters. But these things must go through the National Assembly. Cabinet must bring it to the National Assembly, and if Cabinet has members, all of whom, not majority, but all of whom have an interest, a stake in the fishing industry, Cabinet would not bring that ILO convention. So yes, there is that conflict of interest at play, and it is unfortunate that that has not been addressed. And if it remains unaddressed, it will definitely affect the workers, and they will forever be at the receiving end of politicians, because what they do is protect their interest, and therefore by extension also protect the interest of the companies at the expense of the workers. Yeah.
Now we are in a lockdown situation in the country, very unprecedented, very unheard of before, and jobs are on the line for a lot of people. Within a week only of being in this lockdown, I've seen letters coming from, especially in the tourism industry, employers saying, we are going to send you home, we are going to terminate some of your contracts. What is the best way to deal with this situation from a labor point of view?
Look, again, before this thing came to the point where it is now, on the 24th of this month, we issued a letter we issued a letter to the Ministry of Labour, in which we requested for a meeting. But also in the letter we proposed that a national tripartite committee be put together to deal with these issues on a daily basis, because we knew this would reach crisis proportions. Now, the Ministry of Labour, for one or the other reason, decided perhaps to ignore that, and subsequent to that we learned that there was a meeting on the 24th and 25th of March, subsequent to which a media statement was released by the Executive Director of the Ministry, in which he addressed a few issues, one of which was the taking of leave, annual leave, and the retrenchment and so on. Now, in the same letter, one reads that employers are not supposed to send their employees on annual leave, and they're also not supposed to send their employees on forced leave or unpaid leave. Yeah. Now, I feel that also communicates a very legally unsound message to the employers. That's where we feel. Number one, if this is not a situation that was caused by anybody, then let us not appear to be burdening anybody with this. If employees have leave days, accrued leave days, it is best that those employees be required to take those leave days, go home, and still be paid their salaries. Okay? And where you have employees who don't have leave days, accrued leave days, that those employees still be required to go on leave, be paid their salaries, and that whatever leave days would be used for now, that those then be taken out from the next leave cycle. Then you balance this thing, there's fairness, and nobody is punished or is burdened by it. And I think there must be constant dialogue, first at the national level. It must be a tripartite dialogue at the national level, where unions, government, and employer organizations are constantly monitoring the situation, constantly engaging employers, and send out correct messages to everybody, to the labor market, so that people know exactly what to do, when to do, what needs to be done. Because if you now require people to go home and still be paid and still keep their leave days, what are you going to do if the situation continues for longer than just these 21 days?
Yeah.
You see, so we need to manage this thing much more responsibly than we have been managing it, at least from a labor, point of view.
And what prior to this lockdown, what have you made of just the general economic situation in the country, particularly as it pertains to jobs? I think we are at 33% now nationally, and the youth unemployment stands at 40-something percent. What are the issues? What are we not doing correctly?
Look, the unemployment situation hasn't changed since independence. That's like 30 years. In other words, if at all we've been doing something about it, then it must have been the same thing we've been doing for the past 30 years, but only we have been hoping to achieve different results, but clearly we have not. We have achieved the same result. Unemployment continues to be high. Now, I, for one, believe that you cannot create employment, meaningful, gainful employment, unless you change the apartheid capitalist structure that we have in the country. You see, Namibia is predominantly a retail economy. And the little bit that is different from retail is extractive. You see, we are raw mineral extractive economy. You see, you mine, you take out raw minerals, you export. You buy from South Africa largely, and you sell. That's retail. Now, that's what we are. Now, there's something wrong with that. I mean, when do we begin to manufacture for the world market, for the African market, for the Namibian market, high-tech goods, basic things, food, clothing? You see, basic things. When do we begin to break that structure down in such a way that we manage to do things that South Africans or the apartheid South African government could not do or did not do? All we have done since independence is we have sustained, we have kept what we have inherited from South Africa, but we expect that to all of a sudden miraculously attend to the needs of a greater number of people than it was designed for. So it's a mistake, and I think it's something that must be addressed, and unfortunately we are not there yet. I've read the report of the high-level panel, Mr. Kavagap's report. It still talks about the same old ideas. There's nothing out of the box that comes from that, except a lot of textbook economic theories that it postulates. But the real things that affect human life, those issues are not addressed. Employment is not addressed. And I feel that's the reason why we are where we are today. Another example I would want to perhaps also put out. Look at the thinking of President Pohamba before he retired. And that's the thinking that continues today. And again, that thinking is throughout Mr. Kavagap's report, suggesting, for instance, that you see, you build houses. Now, if you build houses and you call it mass housing, why is it so much an urban thing? Why do we? It's not as if Namibians are all urban. We come to the urban settlements looking for work, and when we retire, we go home. Why are there no developments taking place where people live? Why do we have no respect for what the little that the people have and build on those things to help them make economic ends meet with the little that people have? It doesn't help you build houses in all your urban towns, and when people retire, they go home to villages and there's nothing, you see? And when you go to the villages where most of our people live, you cannot even put out your house or whatever little you have at the village. You can't put that out as collateral when you want money, even from Agribank. You can't do that, you see. Now the question really is, are we an African state? Or are we some European state mistakenly found somewhere in Africa? You know, what are we? Why don't we define our economics in such a way that they speak to the African realities here? And And when we talk about development, it becomes one that integrates a lot of our people in it, and it takes them forward. Instead of focusing development on the areas where most of our leaders live during their days when they lead, and then forget that the majority of people who even vote them into power do not actually live in those areas.
Indeed. Now, on the lockdown situation, this week the Minister of Finance announced some stimulus interventions to sustain businesses, to sustain households. A lot of questions being asked about where this money will come from. A lot of questions being asked about the practicality of, for example, distributing grants on a weekly basis to people. What did you take from that announcement?
Look, I think the intervention is most welcome. I mean, you could not have asked for more. This is the kind of thing you would want a government to do, because clearly it is forcing all of us to begin to think in the long term, based on what we are experiencing now, today, knowing perhaps that this may not just last for 21 days, it could go beyond 21 days. So it is, in that sense, it's a welcome move. As to the practicalities of it, I don't know, I don't think I can say much, but clearly, given the history of what we have with the drought relief money and so on and so forth, you don't really know. Is this something designed to line the pockets of politicians, or is it something designed to genuinely address the needs of our people? But if it is designed to address the needs of our people, then it is a welcome move. And I think it should not just be something that focuses on large corporations. It should also be something that takes into account the little man, woman on the street who's trying to make ends meet, and ensure that we don't perish as a result of these, or during the course of these measures that the government has taken to lock down. And this is where I feel that if there is a constant dialogue between and among the social partners, the employers, the trade unions and government, then we would know for sure as to what areas of need these funds can address and should address. Because there are other non-monetary incentives that government can also dish out, whether it's tax incentives or whatever it is to big corporations and so on. So I feel in essence that it's a pretty much welcome move. It must be put to the right use. It must address the needs that are there, so that it helps ameliorate the plight of our people. But if it is designed to fit some politicians' pockets, then it is an unfortunate thing.
The last two questions, Evilastus, are about these ideas that you're articulating. A lot of people would love to have them implemented, this kind of position that you take on issues. And there was a sense last year at some stage that you were going to stand for elections. I don't know in what capacity, whether as president or whatever, but you addressed the media and then you ran away from us. What happened there? What was happening?
If you know that the best way perhaps is to sit back and support others that could make the same difference or impact, the best thing is to support them. We all knew that we could have made an impact, yes, but we were not going to make an impact that would have broken the camel's back, and I was not interested in that. I was interested in bringing the camel's back. But seeing that was not going to be a possibility, I left it to others to do what they thought was best. But again, there are better ways of contributing as well to society, and I think trade union work is one such way. We cannot all become presidents, nor can we all be politicians. But I think we should give those who think they can be better politicians to do that, and others who can be better leaders in pressure groups like trade unions and so on to do that as well. There's space for that, and I think we can all comfortably do what we are best at doing.
Indeed. The last question which is again a bit private, but you are you're not a private person. You're a public figure. So having flirted with idea of standing last year in those elections, what is your status in SWAPO now? You were, last time I checked, you were a SWAPO card-carrying member of the party.
Well, I'm a card-carrying member of SWAPO still. I've not resigned from SWAPO, but I don't think I would want to be associated with SWAPO given its current state. I've not resigned.
What are your issues with SWAPO?
I've not resigned. What are my issues with SWAPO? Look, it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to see that there's something wrong with Karutura State Hospital on this side and SWAPO multi-million-dollar building this side. Juxtapose the two and you would see there's madness. Now, the SWAPO that some of us thought we belong to would not have done that. SWAPO that we thought we knew would not have relied, for instance, on misplaced economic theories that it has relied on now for the past 30 years or so, believing that if you build tall buildings to house government offices, if you build a lot of these things all over the place, you'll create employment. The SWAPO that I thought I belonged to had more depth than this, and it had more empathy. It believed in the future of Namibians and Namibia as a country. It was not a party that would openly just loot, be associated with corruption without even standing up and saying that is not us. You understand? I mean, if this thing of fish rod did not truly benefit SWAPO, I'm sure SWAPO would have stood up and said, no, that's not us. But I've not had anybody coming out to say that, whether it's Secretary General of SWAPO itself, whether it's the President of SWAPO, they have not done that. So SWAPO in today's days, really, it's more a party of opportunistic politicians interested in looting, have no care whatsoever as to what goes on in the country. And that's why I feel I would not want to be associated with that. I don't think SWAPO in its current form, especially with President Hage at its helm, has done us any good. I think it has done us more damage than good. And to that end, I feel that it has betrayed its historical role. Yes.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Karonda, for coming in today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it a lot.
Thank you very much for having me.
That is Ulysses Karonda, the president of Fonallo, speaking to us about a lot of things as you heard them. I hope you enjoyed the show like I did. Good night.
What is COVID-19? COVID-19 is a new illness that can affect your lungs and airways. It's caused by a type of coronavirus. The symptoms are coughing, high temperature, at least 38 degrees Celsius and higher, and a shortness of breath. Always remember, masks are for health workers and those who are already sick. Make sure information shared is from a reliable source. Do not go out and panic buy. Shelves will be restocked. Vaccines against pneumonia do not provide protection against COVID-19. COVID-19 cannot be transmitted through mosquito bites. Basic protection against COVID-19. Firstly, wash your hands frequently. Regularly and thoroughly clean your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or wash with soap and water. Secondly, maintain social distancing. Maintain a distance of at least 1 meter from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Thirdly, avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth. Hands touch many surfaces and can pick up viruses. Once contaminated, hands can transfer the virus to your eyes, nose or mouth. Finally, sneeze and cough into a tissue or your elbow. Cover your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Dispose of the used tissue immediately. Fact versus fiction. Social media is awash with myths about how people may stop the new coronavirus or treat infection with COVID-19, the disease it causes. Here are some facts to address the fiction. Transmission. It is pure fiction that the new coronavirus can be spread by mosquito bites and in Chinese food. In actual fact, the new coronavirus is a respiratory virus that spreads primarily via droplets when an infected person coughs, sneezes or breathes out, or through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose. Protection. It is pure fiction that regularly rinsing your nose with saline can prevent infection with COVID-19. The fact is, there is no evidence that regularly rinsing your nose with saline has protected anyone. There is some weak evidence that regularly rinsing your nose with saline can help some people recover more quickly from the common cold, but it does not prevent respiratory infections. It is fiction that claims on social media suggest that spraying alcohol or chlorine all over your body can protect against COVID-19 infection, or that gargling bleach or drinking excessive amounts of water can somehow flush it out. The fact is, there is no evidence to back these claims. Good hygiene practices, including frequent hand washing and avoiding close social contact, can help reduce the risk of infection. It is fiction that hand dryers are effective in killing the new coronavirus. The fact is that hand dryers are not effective against the disease, although frequently cleaning your hands with an alcohol-based hand rub, washing them with soap and water is. Clean hands should be dried thoroughly with a clean towel or an air dryer. Cold weather, hot weather, snow, eating garlic, taking a hot bath have also been suggested as ways that people can prevent themselves becoming infected with COVID-19. This is pure fiction. The fact is, there is no evidence behind these claims, no evidence yet that suggests COVID-19 will be affected by weather or the seasons. The best way to protect yourself is by washing your hands frequently, avoiding contact with anyone who might be infected. This way you can eliminate viruses that may be on your hands and avoid infection that might occur by touching your eyes, mouth and nose. It is fiction that you should wear a face mask at all times when outdoors. The fact is that people who are healthy, have no symptoms and have not been diagnosed with COVID-19 need to wear a mask if they are taking care of the person with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 infection. Masks are only effective if you are coughing or sneezing, in which case you should be self-isolating, and only when used in combination with frequent hand washing and other hygiene practices. When it comes to treatment, it is absolute fiction that antibiotics can prevent and treat the new coronavirus. The fact is, antibiotics do not work against viruses, only bacteria. They will not prevent or treat infection with a new coronavirus. There are currently no specific proven medicines for COVID-19 infection, but those infected can relieve and treat mild symptoms with over-the-counter fever-reducing medicines such as paracetamol and aspirin.